The wedding hall shimmered like a dream. Golden chandeliers spilled warm light across crystal glasses and white roses, each table arranged with a perfection only wealth could buy. The air buzzed with laughter, the clinking of champagne, and the hum of a string quartet playing in the background. All eyes were on him, the billionaire groom. The newspapers had called this, the wedding of the year. To the world, he was the picture of success, young, handsome, powerful, and about to marry into another wealthy family. He smiled politely at the guests, shaking hands, bowing his head to congratulations, yet something in his chest felt strangely heavy. He lifted his glass, letting his eyes wander over the sea of people. Then suddenly, he froze. At the far corner of the hall, away from the glittering gowns and tailored suits, a woman moved quietly between the tables. Her uniform was plain, her hair tied back hastily. She carried a tray of dirty glasses with trembling hands, her back bent slightly, as though the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. And then he saw it, the unmistakable curve of her belly. She was pregnant. His heart clenched. It wasn't just any woman, it was her. His ex-wife. The woman he had once loved with every ounce of his being. The woman he had left behind when his ambition burned brighter than his marriage. She didn't notice him. Her eyes stayed low, focused on her work, as though blending into the background was her only shield against the glittering world she no longer belonged to. Guests passed by without even a glance, too caught up in their own joy to notice the quiet figure scrubbing away the remnants of their celebration. The billionaire's glass shook in his hand. His mind raced back to nights they had once shared in a tiny apartment, when money was scarce but laughter was plenty. She had believed in him then, believed in his dreams, even when it meant sacrificing her own comfort. And now, after all his victories, after all his riches, here she was, pregnant and cleaning tables at his wedding banquet. A chill spread through him. The chandeliers above still sparkled, the music still played, the crowd still cheered, but for him, the world had gone silent. Something was about to change. For a long moment, he couldn't move. His body stood rooted to the floor while his heart pounded painfully in his chest. It felt as though two different worlds had collided right there in that shining banquet hall, one world of dazzling wealth and power, the other of quiet struggle and survival. She moved between the tables with measured steps, careful not to draw attention. Every now and then, her hand would rest lightly on her belly, as though instinctively protecting the life growing inside her. She carried herself with dignity, though her faded uniform told a story of hardship she never would have spoken aloud. Their eyes almost met once. Almost. But she turned away quickly, bowing her head as if she feared the recognition in his gaze. He knew her too well, he could see it in the stiffness of her shoulders, the way she tried to stay invisible, the way she prayed no one would notice the truth. He bit his lip, trying to swallow the storm rising inside him. Memories crowded his mind. He remembered her laughter, the way she used to wait for him late into the night when he came home from chasing deals and building empires. He remembered her soft words of encouragement when the world mocked his ambitions. He remembered how she held his hand when all they had was each other. And he remembered how, somewhere along the way, he had let her go. He had told himself it was for the best. That she deserved more than his endless chase for success. That love wasn't enough when ambition demanded sacrifice. But standing here now, seeing her carry trays and wipe down tables at his wedding banquet, pregnant and alone, those excuses felt hollow. What hurt most was her silence. She didn't complain, didn't show bitterness. Instead, she worked quietly, accepting her place with a strength that pierced him deeper than any words could. The hall around him echoed with laughter and music, but in his ears, it all sounded wrong. A single thought burned in his chest, louder than the applause, sharper than the music: how had he let it come to this? The collision of their two worlds could no longer be ignored. He couldn't look away. While the guests laughed and danced under crystal chandeliers, his eyes followed her every movement. She walked slowly, each step weighed down by the child she carried. Yet there was no hesitation, no sign of self-pity. She carried trays, refilled glasses, and cleared plates with the quiet endurance of someone who had learned to survive without complaint. The billionaire moved closer, trying to remain unnoticed, his heart tightening with every small detail he observed. Her shoes were worn thin, the fabric of her uniform stretched at the seams. When she thought no one was watching, she placed a hand gently on her belly, her lips whispering something softly, perhaps a prayer, perhaps a promise to the little life inside her. He overheard two waiters whispering near the kitchen door. One shook his head and murmured, "She refused the charity fund. Said she doesn't want handouts, she wants to work, even like this. She needs every dollar for the baby." The word struck him like a blade. She wasn't just surviving, she was fighting. Fighting for dignity. Fighting for her child. Fighting with a strength he had once fallen in love with, but had forgotten in his world of luxury and pride. He thought of their past, of all the sacrifices she had made when they were together. How she had worked double shifts when his business was only an idea scribbled on a notebook. How she had sold her jewelry just to pay the rent when his dreams hadn't yet paid off. She had been the silent foundation beneath his empire, the one who believed when no one else did. And now, she was here. Serving food at a wedding banquet, his wedding banquet. His chest tightened until he could hardly breathe. He had gained the world, but somewhere in the climb, he had lost the very soul who once gave him strength. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. All his billions, all his success, and yet he couldn't erase the sight of her standing in that faded uniform, cradling her unborn child with quiet resilience. The world around him blurred. He knew then that something had to change. This silent struggle of hers had awakened something long buried in him, something human, something real. Emily's hands trembled as she gathered the man's empty coffee cup. The name on that black card still echoed in her mind, she couldn't quite believe it. Her heart raced, not from excitement but from the surreal weight of the moment. She glanced around the diner, half expecting cameras, or a hidden trick. But it was just the two of them, the hum of the coffee machine filling the silence. The man leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. His eyes, calm but intense, held hers. "You remind me of myself," he said quietly. "I grew up with nothing. Worked nights like this. Wore shoes with holes. I know what it means to choose between eating or paying rent." Emily's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her struggles so plainly, so truthfully. He reached into his jacket, sliding a folded envelope across the table. "Inside is a scholarship fund. Enough to cover tuition, books, living expenses. You once told a coworker you dreamed of becoming a nurse." Emily's eyes widened. She hadn't realized anyone had overheard that private conversation weeks ago. The man smiled faintly. "I believe the world needs more people like you in hospitals, caring for strangers the way you cared for that man tonight." Her fingers hovered over the envelope, afraid to touch it, as if it might vanish the moment she reached out. This can't be real," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. "It's very real," he assured her. "And it's not just for you." He pulled out a second check, placing it on the counter where the staff usually split tips. "This is for your team, for Maria, for the others. No one should feel invisible when they're giving so much of themselves every day." Emily covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling freely now. Her chest ached with gratitude and disbelief. She had lived so long giving without expecting anything in return, and suddenly, someone was giving back in a way she could barely comprehend. "Why me?" she asked, her voice trembling. The billionaire leaned back, his answer simple but powerful. "Because kindness is the only investment that never fails. And you've been investing all along." Emily wept openly, her life forever altered in that single moment of compassion. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. The entire hall stood frozen, guests with glasses halfway to their lips, the bride's family whispering in shock, the musicians holding their notes. All eyes were fixed on the billionaire kneeling before the woman everyone had ignored just moments before. Then, as if something sacred had been awakened, the silence broke. Applause began softly from one corner, then spread like wildfire until the whole hall erupted in thunderous claps. Some guests wiped tears from their eyes, others looked away in shame for not noticing her struggle before. The ex-wife trembled, her hands covering her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. This was not about money, not about wealth or promises. What broke her was the dignity he returned to her, the acknowledgement of her worth, the public honor she thought had been lost forever. She whispered through tears, "I never wanted anything from you. Only to stand on my own." He met her gaze, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "And you have. You've shown more strength than I ever deserved. But strength doesn't mean you must walk alone. Not anymore." The guests, who had come expecting a grand show of wealth and luxury, found themselves witnessing something far greater: humanity. In a hall decorated with gold and crystal, the most valuable thing revealed that night was compassion. The bride's family, though stunned, could not argue with the raw sincerity of the moment. And the billionaire, once celebrated for his riches, was now respected for something far more enduring: his courage to make things right. As the evening drew on, the music returned, but the atmosphere had changed. The gossip was no longer about the extravagance of the wedding, but about the lesson it had given. The ex-wife walked out of the hall that night not as a servant, but as a woman whose dignity had been restored. She carried her unborn child with renewed hope, her steps lighter than they had been in months. And the billionaire? For the first time in years, he felt truly rich, not because of the empire he had built, but because he had rediscovered the only kind of wealth that lasts: love, honor, and the courage to show kindness when it matters most. Sparkle's final message. True wealth isn't found in diamonds or fortune, it's found in compassion, in restoring dignity, and in choosing humanity over pride.